please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
At least if they had assured them that there will not be an expansion, I don't think it would have come to this. And the government has not tried to reach out to the people to even hold talks with them.
யாரோ சொல்லி ஆணை இல்லாம அம்பு பாயாது. அம்பை நொந்து பயனில்லை. ஏவினது யாரு, அம்பு அடிச்சது யாருன்னு பார்க்கணும்.
Well, violent protests continue for a second day in Tamil Nadu's Tuticorin as protesters wage a battle against the proposed expansion of Vedanta Group company's plant, Sterlite copper. 12 people have lost their lives after the police opened fire at angry protesters. 11 were killed yesterday, while one succumbed to injuries today. The Tamil Nadu police and the state government have come under severe criticism, with the National Human Rights Commission taking suo motu cognizance of these developments. The NHRC has given the state 2 weeks to conduct a detailed investigation and submit its report. The Home Ministry has also asked for a report. Sterlite is no stranger to controversy and has seen repeated closures and audits since the start of its operations in 1996. In the past almost 2 decades, Sterlite has had several run-ins with the law. It has been accused of several violations, including falling foul of the Tamil Nadu Air and Water Acts. The Supreme Court in 2013, while allowing the plant to continue to operate in order to protect jobs and cater to India's growing need for copper, did order a 100 crore rupee fine on the company. More recently, over the past 100 days, protesters have been demanding closure of the plant for being a major source of pollution and a risk to health and life. Meanwhile, the Madras High Court has passed an interim order staying the construction of a new copper smelter by Sterlite. The impact of the protests has been felt by the Vedanta stock, which plunged to a 10-month low, falling 6.4% in trade today. Well, let me go across now to our colleague Ashmit Kumar, who's been going through the timeline of the events that have culminated into the violent protests that we are seeing in Tuticorin today. Ashmit, you know, this goes back to almost 1996 when the plant got its license to begin operations. Take us through the history, the controversial history.
Well, the crisis-like situation in Tuticorin stretches back across the last 20-odd years. That's where the genesis lies. It goes all the way back to 1994. Let's, in fact, take a look at the Sterlite saga. Now, what's important is that this smelter plant secured the green nod from the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board, as well as the MOEF in 94 and 95. Both these clearances were, in fact, challenged before the Madras High Court in the year 1996. But what's critical is that despite the challenge having been issued, Sterlite went ahead and commissioned the plant in the year 1997. Now, what's interesting is that, keep in mind, the challenge was filed in 1996. 14 years later, in September of 2010, Madras High Court finally passes the orders, passes a judgment, slams Sterlite, says that there were various violations as far as those green nods were concerned. And on the back of that, Madras High Court directed closure of the Tuticorin plant. Expectedly, Sterlite challenged that before the Apex Court. And soon enough, in October of 2010, a month later, the Supreme Court, in an interim order, stayed the Madras High Court's closure order. So that effectively brought the plant back to life. Now, what's interesting is that, cut to March 2013, this is a critical date to watch for. This is when there were allegations made of a gas leak, of an industrial accident at the site at the Tuticorin plant. These, of course, were allegations. And on the back of that, Tamil Nadu, again in the month of March 2013 itself, had taken cognizance of the issue and had directed closure of the plant. Expectedly, Sterlite then challenged this Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board order before the NGT. Now, mind you, while even as this was pending, the Supreme Court in the previous case had passed an order where it had set aside the Madras High Court order, the order which had in fact stalled the operations at the Sterlite plant. And interestingly, the Supreme Court had also slapped a penalty of 100 crore rupees, but effectively allowed for the plant operations to continue. Now, cut to the second case, the case that was currently pending before the NGT. Now, the NGT, interestingly, overturned the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board order, allowed for the plant to come back to life, calling the order of the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board as abrupt and arbitrary. And that, interestingly, is still pending challenge before the Apex Court. It's been sitting there for about 5 years now. Which brings us to the status quo as of right now. Well, the plant continues to be inoperational since March of 27th. And given the crisis-like situation that has erupted, Madras High Court orders have made it abundantly clear that the company is to cease operations and constructions forthwith, immediately, no delays. It has also said that no activity until final decision by the MOEF. The MOEF is deciding on their application for renewal, and the MOEF will have to take a final decision by September of 2018. So all eyes now on, at least on the legal front, on subsequent hearings coming in before the Madras High Court. Back to you.
Ashmit, appreciate you joining us with those details. Joining me now on the show, Chandrabhushan, Deputy Director General at the Centre for Science and Environment, V. Shruti Devi, environmentalist and member of the Congress, also lawyer. We're also joined by the CEO of Sterlite Copper, P. Ramnath. Thanks very much for joining us on the show. Mr. Ramnath, I'd like to come to you first. You know, law and order is not your responsibility, sir, but I want to ask you, you know, these protests have been on for 100 days now. What could have been the trigger? What, to your mind, has been the trigger that has resulted in these, you know, protests turning violent and leading to what we've seen happen over the last 24, 48 hours?
I think I would say that our plant has been operating in total commitment, total compliance with environmental laws for several years. And our plant has been shut down for a major shutdown since end of March. So I don't think there has been no reason for these kind of protests, because the various myths that have been propagated, they are not true at all. So,
Mr. Ramnath, I'll pick up on what you call as various myths, but, you know, we've seen several agencies, several regulators, including the Supreme Court, say that you have been guilty of environment violations, you've been guilty of licensing conditions being violated as well. I'll get to that in just a second, so they may not entirely be myths as you call them. But let me ask you specifically about what's happened over the 100 days. Have you reached out to these people who've been protesting? Have you tried to acknowledge, understand what their concerns are, to address what their concerns are? Has there been any effort on part of Sterlite to reach out to those who are protesting, saying that you are a major pollutant?
Yeah, in fact, we have been reaching out to the villages. We've been reaching out to the protesters. We have advertised in the newspapers saying that, you know, seeing is believing. So we have invited them to our plant so that, you know, they can themselves take a look at the various kind of measures that we have taken up. But the protesters have not taken up our offer. They have refused. So I would say that these are various canards which are being floated around. I was talking about the various myths. Let me talk about one of the myths, you know, that being propagated is that Tuticorin ranks first in cancer, and the Sterlite is the main cause for that. I would say that this is completely baseless, and whatever data that is being published by the Department of Health and Government of Tamil Nadu, as per that, Tuticorin ranks 14 among male and ranks 25th among the female out of 32 districts in Tamil Nadu. And in fact, Chennai, Kanchipuram, Coimbatore, Kanyakumari, etc., they are the top 6 districts which are predominant. And there are certain other myths, you know, like, for example, they say that Sterlite is letting out effluents into the ocean, which affects marine life. So this, again, is a myth, because Sterlite Copper has been a zero liquid discharge plant right since the inception of the plant in 1995. And all the wastewater is treated.
Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Yeah. I don't have data to take you on the claims that you made about whether this is linked to cancer or not. So I'm not going to go down that road. But let me pick up on the second point that you mentioned. And I am going to quote from the Supreme Court order, because the Supreme Court order said that the NERI reports of 1998, 1999, 2003, 2005 show that the plant did pollute through emissions which did not conform to the standards laid down under the Air Acts of Tamil Nadu, and through the discharge of effluent which did not conform to the standards laid down by the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board under the Waters Act. This is the Supreme Court, sir, in 2013.
Yes, but then the Supreme Court also said that the plant of the appellant will be able to take remedial steps to improve the situation. And thereafter, the company has taken remedial measures as per the Pollution Control Board recommendations to eliminate the possibility of any.
But you said something very different, Mr. Ramnath. I apologize, I'm interrupting you, but you said something very different before that, because you said that there was no polluting effluents that were being discharged at all since inception, which was not the case, as I just quoted the Supreme Court order to you. So what are the remedial measures that you've put in place?
Number one, I would like to say that there was a myth that the effluents are being sent out into the ocean. We are about 20 kilometers from the ocean. 15 to 20 kilometers from the ocean. So if we were to let out the effluents into the ocean, we should have a 15 or 20 kilometer pipeline. So we do not have that. I was saying that we are a zero liquid discharge plant since inception. And since then, we have set up several reverse osmosis plants so that, we recycle the water and then we don't let out even a drop of water go waste. Because we are a responsible company and we know that Tuticorin is a water deficient region. So we consume 70% of our water requirement from desalination plants and only about 20 to 30% comes from the Tamil Nadu Water Department.
Okay. Let me ask you specific questions, sir, since you're talking about remedial measures that you've taken. The Supreme Court had also asked you to pay a 100 crore rupee fine, which was to be deposited with a nationalized bank, and the interest was to be used to improve environment and including the improvement of water and soil. Can you give me a sense of what has happened so far?
Yeah, one of the reasons why the 100 crore deposit was to be made was because the plant operated under a deemed consent. So as per the Water Act 1972, if the consent is not renewed by the Pollution Control Board after the application within 45 days, it will be a deemed consent. So for some of the years, because the Pollution Control Board neither rejected it nor they renewed it because of probably their own procedural reasons, we are not aware. But we had applied well in advance and paid fees for the renewal in time. So therefore, this non-renewal was considered by the Supreme Court as a fault by us, although there was no fault on our side. So therefore, they said that we should deposit 100 crores to the district collector. But I would like to state here that this 100 crores has accrued nearly 35 to 40 crores in interest. And out of this amount, a mere amount of 5 to 6 crores has been spent for various measures, and that too not for any environmental measures, probably for things like laying some roads or things like that. So there have this amount has not been spent for any environmental remedial measures at all.
Okay, you're saying barely 5 crores of the interest that's been accrued so far, which amounts to 30 to 40 crores, has been used on environmental protection. But let me ask you this, Mr. Ramnath, given the fact that there continue to be protests, which amounts to 30 to 40 crores, has been used on environmental protection. But let me ask you this, Mr. Ramnath, given the fact that there continue to be protests from people who are living in that area. Now you've got a Madras High Court telling you that there has to be status quo. You cannot proceed with any further construction or any further activity at this point in time. Will you reassess your plans to enhance capacity there?
Well, I think the matter is now sub judice, so we'll have to take it up with the Madras High Court. And as far as we are concerned, I think the SIPCOT has allotted the land, about 325 acres of land in the SIPCOT area. And these lands were notified, the industrial land which has been acquired in 2005, that is prior to the EIA notification of 2006. And for these lands, the environmental clearance has already been obtained by Sterlite. So we'll have to take it up in the Madras High Court. So we have not been given a chance to give our rejoinder to the writ which was filed in the Madurai High Court. So we have to take it up now.
Yeah. Mr. Ramnath, you've also been quoted as saying that there are vested interests that are stirring trouble in Tuticorin. Who are you alluding to, sir?
There are various, there are some nefarious elements which have infiltrated the various villages who have their own agenda. I would also say that probably there are certain other parties who have got their other interests in mind. So these are the because otherwise.
No, are you talking about corporate interests? What are you talking about? Are you talking about corporate interests being involved here?
If you just allow me to continue, for about 5 to 6 years since 2013, the plant has been operating without any trouble at all. And our plant has been shut down for the past 2 months. So we really don't understand why this thing should suddenly crop up. that the entire populace of Tuticorin, which was absolutely quiet for 5 years, why they should come up now?
Well, I'm not so sure if it's fair to say that people were quiet, sir, because as we pointed out on that timeline before we started the discussion, it's virtually since the inception that you've been running into trouble, with residents raising cause for complaint about you being a pollutant, with you being in crosshairs, whether it's with the Madras High Court, the Supreme Court, the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board, the NGT. It has been a fairly controversial existence for you in Tuticorin, so I'm not sure whether it would be necessarily accurate to say that there's been no trouble.
No, I agree. Probably in the initial years there may have been certain incidents that have happened, but I would say that thereafter the entire case has been argued in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has allowed us to function. And thereafter, again in 2013. There was an allegation which was taken up with the National Green Tribunal, and the National Green Tribunal made it very clear that we are not a polluting company, and we shall not be a polluting company in future as well. I think it gave a very, very clear statement as that.
Okay, I'd request you to hold on. I want to bring in my other guests as well, Mr. Ramnath. We've got R.K. Radhakrishnan, the Associate Editor of Frontline Magazine, with us. Also with us, Shruti Devi of the Congress, as well as an environmentalist and the author of Earth Republic. Mr. Radhakrishnan, I want to come to you, sir. And, we've also got Chandrabhushan, Deputy Director General at the Center for Science and Environment, with us. Let me ask you, what do you make of the developments that have played out, and what possibly could be the triggers for what we're seeing happen today?
See, the problem with the answers of the CEO, very respectfully, let me add this, is that he's talking like a chemical engineer. He's a chemical engineer by training, I understand. Now, the problem is that it is much, much beyond this. I mean, you cannot sit and say that, we are a zero polluting company by having some papers on hand. People have a doubt. People have shown us proof that water is leaking out, and they have shown enough and more pictures on the Madras Press Club, every other place. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that Sterlite is responsible, but if you're going to hold on to this technical viewpoint, if you're going to say that NGT has cleared us, NERI has cleared us, Supreme Court has cleared us, and Madras High Court has cleared us, it's not going to work, because there is an agitation on the ground, and people have genuine concerns. Yeah. Have those been addressed by the district administration? Have you worked with the district administration? Have you worked with the state government? It's a rumor that there is a state government in Tamil Nadu right now. Have you worked with any of these people? The answer is a no. And that is the crucial problem, I would say. And the other thing is that, see, there is a case coming up. Bharataraman argued for Sterlite 2 weeks ago. I mean, Sterlite wanted only half an hour to argue. They did close their argument. TCB, the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board, delayed it, and the arguments concluded only literally just yesterday, I think. And the next hearing is 6th June. That is the context. That is the time frame into which the entire agitation has to be placed. I'm very sure that there were extremist elements in the agitation, but then Sterlite did not have its eye on the ball. The intelligence agencies did not have the eye on the ball. It's a complete failure of the corporate and the government in place, and it's a total mess right now.
It is a total mess right now. Mr. Ramanathan, as I pointed out, law and order or intelligence is not your responsibility, sir. But at the start of my program, I asked you whether you had tried to engage with people. And merely to say, come see our plant, it's a world-class facility, as Mr. Radhakrishnan is pointing out, doesn't really cut ice when people are worried about their safety, when people are worried about their livelihood, when they're worried about their future. Has there been any meaningful engagement on the ground to try and dispel the doubt? I mean, you're calling them myths on the show, sir, but people are genuinely afraid for their lives.
Let me give you a very good example of why people should not be concerned about it. Over the last 20 years, senior management of the company has been staying in townships which are just about a kilometer, maybe about half a kilometer away from the plant. Over the last 20 years, there have been several families, there have been several children which have grown in these townships without any problem at all. So we are actually, I would say that these families are all living proof that there is nothing wrong. So I think these are the kind of schematics. That is what I'm trying to tell you, that there are these kind of myths, these are these kind of unfounded rumors which are being floated around, which don't have any base, which do not have any data which is backing them.
Okay. Well, I come back to my point that there is a history where these have been proven to be not just myths or unsubstantiated rumors, sir. But let me bring in Nityanand Jairaman, who's been tracking this story as well. Nityanand, you've been writing extensively about this. Now, you know, forget the corporate for a second. What about the regulator? What about the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board? What about the NGT? What about the NEERI? I mean, there are conflicting orders, conflicting instructions, conflicting directions coming in from each of these regulators and each of these agencies who are looking at this situation in the past. Well, I'll get to Nityanand in just a second, but let me go across to Chandrabhushan. Chandrabhushan, let me put that same question to you. You know, this is a mess because of the many directions, the many agencies involved, and the conflicting opinion that's coming in since all the way from 1996 to virtually 2013 and now.
First of all, let me say that it is for the response like what the CEO of Sterlite Copper has given, that this company has been in trouble across this country. You look at Vedanta's plant, in wherever they are, they have been found to have environmental problems. Whether it was Niyamgiri in Orissa, or it is Tuticorin, or the kind of activities they are doing in Chhattisgarh, Vedanta has been found to be flouting environmental laws across the country. And I think probably it is built in the corporate structure of this country, this company. This company will have to seriously look inside and see what is the problem with this, its environmental performance. Now, you know, report after report says that they have been flouting environmental law, and still the CEO thinks that the company is doing great. I think that's the fundamental problem with this company. Regarding Pollution Control Board, I'll say that, you know, the 20 years of this controversy tell us that our entire environmental governance is defunct. A company which has been fined 100 crore, a company which was closed by High Court, Pollution Control Board in numerous cases have found it to be flouting the environmental law. This company shouldn't have been allowed to operate. Leave about expansion. That is a very, very different issue, okay? It tells us the bankruptcy of environmental governance in this country, the weakness in our pollution regulators. So, you know, this might be one case, but till we improve our environmental governance, these kind of things will continue happening in this country, because we do not have institutions to resolve conflict. We do not have institutions who are going to take a strong action and close down plants that are flouting the norms.
Let me put that point across to Shruti. Shruti, you know, I think valid points that Chandrabhushan is making there, that environmental governance today is defunct in India, that we don't have a mechanism of being able to resolve conflict. We're shifting the blame from one position to another. We're shifting responsibility from one authority to another. You know, given what we're seeing play out, it doesn't give us much hope for the future, doesn't it, Shruti?
Shireen, yes. Shireen, hi. First of all, let me just clarify that I'm not an official spokesperson of my party, but of course I'm an AICC member, and we have come across this company, Sterlite, in our past struggles against, you know, what they were doing in Orissa. In the context of Niyamgiri. Now, it is not my job today to point fingers at specific companies, so I'd rather speak at, you know, at the policy level, and also, like you just said, about institutions. Sure. And to pick up from what Chandrabhushan just said, being a Supreme Court lawyer, I'd like to first of all draw immediate attention to the need for the kind of judicial reform that we have been working on of late. So I think that is underway, and it's a difficult task, but you know, we are sort of inching ahead on that. There are a number of vacancies in the regular judiciary, We also need to create, we need to have more benches of the regular judiciary, as well as, strengthen the ultimate dispute resolution mechanism where relevant, and not introduce it where you still need the regular judicial system. That's one thing. The other thing I'd like to say, of course, is that as far as our institutions go, I'm glad that you've just announced that the Human Rights Commission is looking into this. The National Human Rights Commission, I learned this from your channel, so that's a good thing. And, as far as us being a robust democracy goes, I'd like to say that, first of all, if there were protesters on the ground, I think they would have been there because there was a fair need, okay, not because they've just been manufactured from out of nowhere. So if they were there, that means there was a problem. And if this company is claiming that they've done everything that the court has asked them to do, then why is there still a problem? Which brings us to, at the policy level, what is the way forward? I think the way forward, even when it comes to resettlement and rehabilitation, is something that we still need to address, which is how intangibles are calculated and looked at, okay? That is something that our party made a few small steps forward in improving the resettlement and rehabilitation law, but there's lots that still needs to be done, which I think the Narendra Modi government has miserably failed to do. Secondly, not secondly, I've made quite a few points, but I'd also like to say that what is the government of Tamil Nadu up to? I mean, if their police behave like this is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, either they have orders to do this or they think they can behave like this. And I'd like to say that this has happened today in an area which is not a remote tribal area, and people have been killed, right? And of course, our robust democracy and system is looking into it, but I want the rest of the citizens of India to know that this is the kind of thing that often happens in tribal areas, and immediately the people in these areas, the citizens, are tagged as Naxals. A number of things that are today being referred to as encounters and people have been killed. I still have my doubts and questions about, normal and regular citizens just falling to bullets at various places. And so these things need to be addressed. Primarily, I think the Niti Aayog should look into this intangibles aspect. And also the role of CSR. I think we've reached a tipping point where CSR, need to bow before democracy. And you can't, because you don't want these kinds of decision-making powers in the hands of companies. And let me tell you that security-wise, and we have prepared a document called Securing India's Future, which is better known as the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. But it was called Securing India's Future, and I was in on that project, observing and participating in what was being done. And I would like to inform everybody yet again that water is one of the single largest security issues that we foresee globally, nationally, and it is also
absolutely.
Yes, and it's also an area for solutions. So that's another point I'd like. We're running out of time. So let me get a quick final word in from Mr. Ramanathan. Mr. Ramanathan, given what has happened in Tuticorin, not today or yesterday, but since the plant's inception, sir, is it not time for some serious introspection on how you engage with the local community, on how you get the buy-in of the local community as you decide to expand your project, as you decide to expand capacity? Is there a need for a rethink and a review of how you engage?
Yeah, certainly I would say that. I think we have been engaging with the local community. And in fact, in terms of employment, we've ensured that 70% of the total employment is from Tamil Nadu. And of that 70%, again, another 70% are from Tuticorin itself. And apart from that, we've also undertaken various CSR activities, like provision of water, which is a scarce commodity in Tuticorin, to all the villages in and around. And also various other activities like providing them health facilities, providing them education, providing them vocational training. We have been doing this in the past, and then we will continue to do it. Definitely, I think, I'm sure that we need to step up the activities and improve our connect with the local people in and around our plant. Definitely, I mean, these are very important stakeholders that we need to build bridges with.
Yeah, Mr. Radhakrishnan, a quick final comment from you. We're getting information that internet services have been snapped in that area. As you pointed out, where is the Tamil Nadu government in all of this?
Yeah, there has been a complete intelligence failure. Apart from that, what Ramnath is talking about is fine during normal times. 12 people have been killed. This is not going to go away from public memory. And that is the crucial point here. 3 districts are going to be inconvenienced because there is not going to be internet connectivity for the next few days. This is another draconian step that the government has taken. After a firing yesterday where 10 people were killed, the government has the gall to actually go out and shoot one more person today. Actually, 5 people have been injured and they are in hospital now. All this comes back, and again, the contributions that Vedanta makes to the ruling government at the center also, that also comes into question, 19 crores apparently. So all these point to the fact that Sterlite and government are hand in glove, and these doubts will continue. That's the whole point. You cannot win back the confidence of the people by providing water anymore. That is fine during a normal time. I want Sterlite and the government to come out and tell people what it has in mind for the people who are affected. Come out with a clear plan. Yesterday, you have seen that the government comes out with the number, the governor comes out with the second number, the police comes out with the third number, and my own people tell me that 12 people have been killed. These are essential, huge problems. I hope that Sterlite understands the seriousness of the situation. Otherwise, 6,000 crores is going to go down the drain, and it is going to be a huge employment loss for Tamil Nadu as well.
It is certainly not business as usual. Chandrabhushan, I will give you the final say. This is an unfortunate turn of events that's taking place in Tuticorin, but it has lessons for a whole host of companies and a whole host of projects across India, especially those that are operating in mineral-rich states. Quick final word from you on the lessons to be learnt.
The first lesson is don't cut corners. There are laws that has to be implemented, and as a good corporate citizen, you should be responsible and implement those laws. No one is expecting you to do charity. Mr. Ramanathan can keep supplying water. That's not his job. The job of supplying water is that of the government. People expect you to follow environmental norms, protect the environment, give taxes, do your business. That's what. And if you don't do this, then I don't think you should be in the business. So that's what the end point is. Be a responsible business. Don't cut corners.
All right, gentlemen, we will have to leave it there. And Shruti, thanks very much for joining us, Mr. Ramanathan, Mr. Radhakrishnan, Chandrabhushan, and Shruti Devi. Appreciate your time here on CNBC TV18 special as we take stock of the developments in Tuticorin. Back from a break in just a moment.